Well, hello, Dr. Amy. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, Jim, and hello, everyone. Welcome to the Driving Optimism podcast, a podcast about problem solving. And today we're here with Dr. Amy. This is part two of our series of post-COVID kind of teaching at home. And today we're very honored to have Dr. Amy giving us a perspective of the principal. And last week, if you're interested, you can check out Annalisa's episode looking at the parents' POV, just one of millions of parents going through this and one of thousands of principals. So without further ado, Dr. Amy, just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are today and how you're doing.
Well, we are certainly in some interesting times together right now, aren't we?
For sure.
So this is my 27th year in education, and this is definitely a first for me. I have had a career as a music teacher, a fifth grade teacher, an accidental art stint that I wasn't really qualified for. And and then I'm in my 15th year being an elementary principal. So my focus is really on the elementary kiddos. And so I completed my PhD at UMKC in the States. And my area of research is in equity and culturally responsive teaching and learning. And so let's see, I also have a beautiful family. It's been a little bit easier for me working from home because my kids are all grown up. Uh, I have teachers that are on the struggle bus
Yep.
trying to school their own littles along with the children that they're responsible for at our school, which is Ravenwood. I am in the Midwest in Kansas City, Missouri in the United States. And so right in the middle of everything, we have been on a stay-at-home order for several weeks now here in Kansas City, Missouri. And we just found out last Thursday that our schools are closed for the remainder of this school year. So that was a little heartbreaking news. We want to be safe for sure. So we understand that it's necessary news, but as a staff and a school community, we did have to come together a little bit to just acknowledge that we're feeling pretty sad about that, not being able to see those that we love and care so much about. So.
No, well, no, of course. I mean, that's you've shared with that intro clip we showed, you trying to kind of continue some of the traditions digitally, right? The announcements, the birthdays. And so we definitely want to get into some of the different platforms you use, how they're working, and then maybe the things that human connection that hasn't really been satisfied yet, and how you are thinking about that.
Yeah.
But if I may, I'm just so curious. Jim and I kind of both come from our tech backgrounds, different types of tech backgrounds, but learning management systems and kind of online education platforms have been around for, I don't know, maybe at least 20 years, right? At least.
Yes.
In different forms uh, but they just never stuck, right? There was just something about them. They were kind of wonky to use, or they just, that it just didn't quite really recreate the human interaction, or there was that really peak of the um, massive online courses that like MIT was doing, and people really didn't uptick them that much. And so there's been this, like, I don't know, this like doldrums of ed tech. So I was curious, maybe this is my POV, but I'm curious, how you were preparing before this, because schools had to be preparing for this before. How was that going for you? And then did this accelerate it by a year, by 5 years, by 10 years?
Well, we're on it whether we want to be or not.
Yeah.
So if you're not on board, you're getting on. I would agree with you. I actually have my master's in educational technology, and I got my master's back in 2003, I believe. And so we were really working at that time on trying to integrate technology into the classroom and trying to innovate things in the classroom. And a lot of times what you find yourself going back doing is just substituting the technology for tools you already had. So, just using a word processor doesn't, it's just replacing paper and a pencil, right? However, I would say that we have grown a lot. I am so fortunate to be in a district that is very, I believe, very innovative. And a few years ago, we actually went to one-to-one with our devices. So our high schools had already had laptops one-to-one, and then a few years ago, they were able to budget in such a way that our elementary school students were able to have an iPad, K
Cool. Quick
through
question. Are
5.
they all iPads? Is it all Apple or is
It's
it all
all
Google?
Apple.
All Apple.
All Apple.
Got it.
And which I know is unusual because there are a lot of great, Google Classroom has so many great free products out there. But it was just fortunate that we were able to put together the packages and the leases and that kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So, so it's currently set up that our 3rd through 5th graders take their iPads home, and then K through 2 did not, but they had them available within the classroom. Now, we have found some really interesting things that have happened during that time. So when we first started using the iPads in the classroom, we were so excited. But again, just like that word processor just took the place of a pencil paper, we were finding kids were using things like Epic, which is amazing. It gives parents and children access to thousands and thousands of book titles. And it's a wonderful product, and they've been very generous with their subscriptions and things like that right now. They're opening it up to everybody to have for free. But what we found students doing is just flipping through and not really reading, right? And so we had to really adjust the way that we were teaching and the way that we were interacting with students with the technology. So that's just one example. So in the education world, we use, we talk about different models of integrating technology. So are you just substituting? Are you pushing it to the next level? Where are you at in those levels of implementing technology? And so I think that once again, a lot of it ended up being, oh, well, here's a great math website where you can practice your facts. So once again, we're still substituting, right? It's flashcards, only fancier. And maybe you can earn some badges, and badges are fun. Who doesn't want to earn a badge? I like to earn a badge on my Fitbit.
Gamification of education and everything else.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Yep. And so, but then we also discovered some really interesting things we were able to do. And so we try to do kind of a blended environment of that traditional environment along with maybe some more creative ideas. So one app in particular that I can think of that that has been really useful is Book Creator. So here's a tool where kids can go in and they can draw, they can add video, they can add their voice, they can take pictures, they can put it together, and they can make a creation. That is something they were not able to do before that technology was available. Then the other thing is, then how can I share it? Who's my audience? So these are the kinds that we've been thinking about in education before we got slammed into with this, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of where we were going. That was the path we were heading, is not everything has to be super creative and innovative with the technology in the classroom. Some things really do just need to be that really cool math game where I can earn the badges and have a little bit of motivation behind it.
Yep.
But we were definitely looking, a lot of our work was built on the book Bold Schools by Schinniger. Great book. But that's kind of where we were. We weren't really prepared to be all online. And while some of the things that we were already using very regularly, we use Class Dojo. So Class Dojo is a platform that allows us to kind of have our own private Facebook community for the school.
Got it.
Okay, so it's closed and safe. Okay. But we use that a lot because we're a positive behavior support school. And so if you heard my announcements, be nice, be safe, and work hard with integrity. If a student was found doing something awesome, man, you were really showing safety by walking in the hall and, that kind of thing, then they might be awarded a dojo point. And so the parents would be able to see that. And then they would trade those points in to do things like, hey, I'm going to be the principal for the day. Or, hey, I just earned lunch bunch with my teacher. So it's a really neat platform that can be used for that. And then sharing announcements and things with your school. Okay. So that was kind of a norm. Then we also started implementing Seesaw.
Okay.
Great learning platform. Kids can set up portfolios. They can share their work. Teachers can respond to their work. But we were using it more for parents to be able to have kind of an insight into what the students were doing.
Interesting.
Not necessarily that we were going back and forth, which is what it has evolved to now.
Cool.
So, which is wonderful that it has a capacity to do so. So those were kind of our major platforms that we were using for ed tech, along with things like Epic, and there's iReady is another. There are so many things out there, but iReady is a platform that students can practice reading and math skills and things like that on. So that's where we were.
Okay.
I would say that this has propelled us most definitely easily a year. If not, I don't know that we ever saw that we would be doing it exactly like this, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I keep waking up thinking I'm in Ready Player One. Where are the snacks?
Oh, it's so good.
Oh, where's the VR?
There's a trivia game. I can totally play that trivia game right now.
Yes.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So I think that we just always saw that we were going to be in a blended learning environment, not a complete distance learning.
I think that's fascinating. I mean, I'm just sorry to cut you off, Dr. Amy. I apologize.
Right.
But, I think that concept, I just wanted to go back to this blended concept, because it's something that, we often make this binary choice with digital or offline. And really, our future is blended, right? Our future is not virtual reality, it's augmented reality. And there's a little bit of digital, there's a little bit of real. We've got to kind of figure out what's the best interplay and how to maintain our own sanity, I suppose, as we go through that. I want to give Jim a chance to ask a couple of questions as well, because I kind of can sometimes get a little excited and occupy all of this.
All right, I appreciate your kindness, Shane. Thank you very much. Amy, I have some questions around equity. Like, how are you going about solving some of the equity problems? I know here in Sydney, there's quite a big gap in my son's school with some of the kids, and they're struggling. They may not have internet access or have a device, things like that. How is the school or the school district solving those problems at this district level, even at the state level, if they're helping at all?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and a question that I'm following pretty heavily. I've been involved in some parent camps. I want to give a shout out to Parent Camp. If you get on Twitter, Laura Gilchrist is from St. Joe, Missouri, and she, along with a couple of colleagues, have got that off the ground. But we've been talking about just this point, equity between resources, because it looks so different from city, urban to rural, to super urban, right? So I'm really fortunate to be in a district that, number one, was already one-to-one, which made this so much easier than those schools and districts that did not have one-to-one devices, right? Yep. Because if you're in a position where you don't have the devices to share, now what are you doing? You're scrambling with your funds to find devices for students. So that's really a struggle. But then, yes, a very real struggle is, where did they get the internet? So, many families did have internet already or some access. So what we have done as a district is we have paired with our internet companies, and again, bringing communities together. Like Comcast has been, or Spectrum and Comcast have been big ones that have donated, 30 to 60 to 90 days of free internet. Now, of course, when this is all over, they're hoping to get your business. If you're back to work, please come to us. It's definitely trying to create a partnership. And so we were able to we have what is called school community resource specialist, which is kind of a long term for like a school social worker, that they have helped. We've kept my Google spreadsheet of, who have you not connected with? Okay, we're going to follow up. What reasons do we know that they have not connected? Okay, so it's an internet issue. So then I've handed that over to my school community resource specialist and had her work with those families to try to get those services from Spectrum and Comcast and some of those other places. Now, if they could not access that, another thing that our district did was we had several hotspots already available in our district that we were using for families and other business reasons and things like that. So we went and handed families hotspots so that they could have access and be able to get on Seesaw through the internet that way.
That's great.
So, and these are kind of out of the box thinking and things that we haven't necessarily had to do a whole lot of before. But I have big concerns about equity. If you have family, I have several families who are ELs, they're English learners. And so being able to access those resources because they don't speak English or that kind of thing has also been really heavy on my heart, because it's hard to navigate all of the fill out this form and do all these things. So now I've got my school community resource specialist working with my EL teacher and the EL department, trying to make sure that these families aren't left behind either, just because they can't access all the announcements and all the information that way.
Here in Sydney, there's kind of a little bit of a move in Australia in general for people to donate their data to kids that need it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Is there a way for anybody in your community to donate access to the internet, or is that something that hasn't really been talked about?
That has not come up, but I love that idea, and I'm totally going to take it and share it. But that hasn't been something that has come up on my radar as far as our resources go.
Yep.
Isn't Sprint in Kansas City?
Yes.
Was it? Because they have rollover minutes, right? Maybe someone could hit up as a family member at Sprint and could hit that up. Mm-hmm. Problem solving in action.
Problem solving right here.
Yep.
Hey, well, we've got a few moments left. Probably have enough time for kind of one or two more questions, of which I will hog them.
Sure. As you do,
as I always do. So, and actually we've skipped, because it's been such a great conversation. There's a couple of things that we've skipped, but I'm just going to kind of jump ahead to the last question, but also reference the answer you just talked about falling behind. So there's this concept, you were talking about falling behind resource-wise, which then leads to falling behind in programmatically keeping up with the education system. But I'm curious at a more macro level, like, is this experience that everyone's going through in education, are the kids falling behind or are the kids ahead? And I guess, there's a perspective. I mean, that might be a hard question for you to answer as a principal, and if you want to couch around it, that's fine. But, I was talking to my mother, who listens to this podcast. She's one of our 5 active listeners. And she said to me, a parent teaches a kid how to be a human being. And so, I'm just kind of curious on, are the kids behind educationally? Are they ahead because of this moment in time and being more human? And then what's been the impact of creativity and imagination in these times is kind of like the bonus question if we get time.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for all the dings.
Well, I guess you have to go soon too, so we'll make it quick.
I'll make it quick.
Yeah. So are the kids ahead or behind, and how does creativity play into everything?
Well, I think that this is such an important question, because we are really seeing a variety of responses. So some of those kids that may have struggled in the classroom are just shining now and being very creative. I have a 5th grader who did like her own screencast of things to help the students in her classroom because they were struggling, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so you're seeing this surge of of creativity in those ways. I'm also seeing some kids who are really shining in the classroom where this has been hard. And then also when if I could touch upon too, everybody's family situation is different. So some kids have some supports from home, but maybe some people are still working and they're working long hours. And so, there's been a little bit more flexibility, but this is a completely new normal that it's like, where's the rule book? Because we don't have one. Mm-hmm. But I think what's really important to think about is, as you see these things that are really, the creativity piece, I'm thinking I had a couple other kids today that also just posted on how to take care of yourselves because this is hard. I mean, this is kids great. Just coming up with this. This is what they want to do. And we are, as a district, trying really hard to take advantage of the opportunity of, okay, state testing was canceled. Mm-hmm. Okay, what do we want to do at this time? Let's do some problem-based learning and get as creative as we can and keep students engaged, because it's really easy to disengage if you're trying to do school as normal, but just putting it on the computer, right?
I can see that.
That is the same. That's just the same thing I was talking about earlier. That's just substitution. Yeah. We're not innovating anything if that's what we're doing. Here, do this assignment. That's boring. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're redefining in our own minds and as a school community of educators, like where will this take us next? Because you know what? This is probably going to happen again. Like, I don't see it not happening.
Yeah.
So what are we learning from this experience? What do we need in an infrastructure to make sure that we can do this and not just substitute it? And then how can you stay connected while we're doing that as well? And so I think that's the other creative piece that's come out of this, is how can we stay connected to our kids? Well, we're gonna read some bedtime stories and we're gonna post them on Class Dojo. You're gonna get your announcements every morning through social media, right? Or that's another way creativity has really been sparked during this time, is that how do you do human connection when I can't touch you?
Yeah. It's tough. It's like that connection's really important, and now we have to do it in different ways. Shane, I'm guessing that we're running out of time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think,
because I've got so many questions I could ask. But
I think we're probably we'll let you wrap us up, Jim. I'll let you wrap us up.
Well, I think that's been great. I wish we had more time. We could talk about more things. I've got so many questions about integration and how we could solve some of those more complex problems in short term, long term. And I'm glad to see that your students have a principal like you, and that your positivity and your seizing these opportunities to change, because this isn't going away anytime soon. I mean, we go back a long way. We've known each other since I remember. I met you when I was in grade 7. To all the listeners out there, Amy and I are from the same town, which is St. Joseph, Missouri. Yeah. She lived a few doors up from me on a hill that was fantastic in winter when it was snowing.
Yes.
It's great for sledding. And
we had a great creek to play in.
And we had a great creek behind the house as well to play in, so we could play war and all that stuff. It was fantastic. That was our creative time. Now creative time is a little bit different. And I hope, and I'd like to just ask one yes or no question, really.
Okay.
Do you think that there's actually, this is a great opportunity because it's forcing kids to think differently rather than just rote learning and prescriptive testing? Now it's like they have to think and be taught to think differently and adapt to a situation to me that's a growth opportunity. And do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. And I want you to think about the children of World War II and Victory Gardens and some of the other creativity that came out, because that's the only thing that I can go back to all kinds of things that have happened in my lifetime that don't really compare quite to this as far as the impact, at least here in the United States, on our kids here. Let me preface it by saying that. So if you think back to how hard it was on families and how hard it was on children, but the things that came as a result of that, it's pretty big. And I do think that this will fundamentally change the way things are done. it would have to, and I do think that kids have to think differently. And I think teachers and administrators have to think differently, and think through what the possibilities can be. Because when you try to align schools, what we're teaching in schools and all the testing and all of that, and you try to align that with what companies and businesses say they need, it doesn't always match, right?
Yeah.
Like, you need teamwork, you need communication, you need innovation, you need, right? And so when you're talking about some of the things that we learn by rote, or things that kids don't have a choice in, right?
Yeah.
Right now, we're saying, give the kids some choice. As a matter of fact, we're talking about Genius Hour. And in Genius Hour, it's like, what's your passion project? What do you love? What do you want to know more about, instead of me telling you what you need to know?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Well,
Shane, I'm sorry to, that was a really big question. That was a wonderful answer. I'm really glad I got time to ask that question. Are we out of time, Shane, or can we keep going?
We are at a time. It is,
right.
But it's always Genius Hour, and we would love to have Dr. Amy back if she would be so kind as to give us some more time.
Yes.
Continue this conversation. I mean, obviously this is a kind of COVID current with some future looking, but this topic of educational platforms and transforming communities and the gap between schools and parents and education and thinking differently are all topics we want to keep talking about. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing for the schools and for the kids that need that support and those resources, and for supporting all those parents and everyone there who's just looking for some normalcy. I felt very comforted watching your video, so I'm sure the rest of the Ravens do as well. And so thanks to everyone who tuned in today. Make sure you subscribe and tell your friends, and share this podcast / YouTube video with people who may need some solutions to how to make the most of these times. So again, Jim, you're the best. Amy, stay gold, and everyone, will talk to you next week. Excellent.
Bye.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.